So I'm going to introduce you to a very special Goldsmiths Company commission. It's the Coronation Cup of His Majesty King Charles III, which was presented to His Majesty on his first visit to the City of London as sovereign on the 18th of October 2023. In presenting it to you, I'm extremely grateful to the cup's makers for detailed images showing how the piece was designed and made. And I hope these illustrations that I'm going to show you will enable you to understand something of the imagination, the skill, the craftsmanship, which make this such a very special piece. But beyond that, I hope to convey the culture of patronage and collaboration in which it was created. Working on this talk, I've been thinking continually of the great tradition of European treasuries, which we've heard about this morning from Paulus and others, such as the Waddesdon bequest, into which this cup fits so beautifully, as I hope I will show you. In fact, it could go straight into the Waddesdon bequest gallery in the British Museum, which I curated in 2014. There is a very long-standing history to a commission like this one. The company has supported excellence, craftsmanship and community ever since it received its first royal charter in 1327. That commitment was renewed in 1926 in collecting and promoting contemporary British designer silver, and again in 1961 in collecting studio jewellery. In 1973, the company developed its outstanding patronage of the Contemporary Art Medal. Our continuing commitment in all three fields is demonstrated in publications and through our acquisitions for our collection, listed in our annual report supporting contemporary makers. Commissions are a really important element in developing the collection of British designer silver, which is now one of the best, if not the best, in the world. And this piece is one of the most significant commissions that we've made in living memory, and it has a good story to tell. The cup is 45 centimetres tall, and here you see a detail of the enamelled knop on the stem, the size of a golf ball, which shows the Earth as viewed from space. It's not the only Goldsmiths Company commission for the coronation of King Charles III. We led on a historic commission of a new processional cross, the Cross of Wales, by His Majesty the King, which celebrates the centenary of the church in Wales. The cross was blessed by the Archbishop of Wales in April and then led the coronation procession at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of May 2023. It was commissioned from one of the foremost British silversmiths, Michael Lloyd, to show his signature skill of hand chasing, which is the closest thing to drawing on silver. And here you can see his beautiful design for the knotwork based on 1,000 years of Welsh art and design rendered in a contemporary idiom on the cross. And you can also see that little red detail at the centre of the cross is a relic of the true cross presented by the Pope, which had to be fitted very swiftly into the cross just before the coronation. On the back of this cross are engraved the words from St. David's last sermon in Welsh. Be joyful, keep the faith, do the little things. Four specialists worked in collaboration with Michael Lloyd on the slate, the wood carving, the lettering and the gilding. This marvellous processional cross is now in use across Wales by Anglican and Catholic churches. We're very fortunate to work in a continuous living tradition. We work with the Goldsmiths Company in Clerkenwell, which is now 10 years old, which offers support and training for jewellers, silversmiths and the allied trades. It helps makers develop successful, rewarding careers, and it's a unique community of working goldsmiths and trainees. Its aim is to create a skilled workforce, boost the economy and promote craftsmanship in the UK, all things which matter to His Majesty the King. Celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Goldsmiths Centre coincided with finishing the Cross of Wales in readiness for its use in the coronation, and that led to a very special occasion. We invited the King to visit the centre in November 2022 to mark its anniversary and meet our apprentices and students, and also to be the first king in English history to apply what has been known as the King's Mark on a piece of silver made for him. Here you see the hallmarks on the left on the Cross of Wales, in which the leopard head mark of the London Assay Office, known traditionally as the King's Mark, was applied by the hand of the King himself under the guidance of Adam Phillips from the Company Assay Office and the maker of the cross, Michael Lloyd, who's wearing a tweed suit and standing behind, looking on the scene. On this occasion, His Majesty was delighted to meet the next generation of makers, our apprentices at the Goldsmiths Centre, so that every aspect of the cross and its making represents the enduring importance of traditional hand skills working in a contemporary idiom. Now, we prepared things very carefully for this occasion, with test pieces for the King to work on before he marked the cross himself. Michael Lloyd turned these into napkin rings, which are now in the company collection and in use, together with the hammer and the leopard head punch used by the King on this historic occasion. I had to say I had to prize the hammer out of the assay office. They were very sorry to lose this. It was a special piece. And from the cross to what is quite literally a footnote to the coronation. The Goldsmiths Company also commissioned a pair of silver gilt buckles for presentation to the King to wear on his coronation slippers. The buckles were masterminded by the silversmith Clive Burr, a liveryman of the Goldsmiths Company, in collaboration with a group of specialists. They're closely modelled on the pair worn by the King's grandfather, George VI, at his coronation in the Abbey on the 12th of May 1937, which are held by the Royal Collection. These buckles are decorated with a neo-Georgian design of the UK's national flowers. And you can see the slippers with their buckles worn by George VI in the coronation portrait by Sir Gerald Kelly, which is in the Royal Collection. Now, the new buckles had to be larger and be engineered to fit the form of the slippers on which they were to be worn. Here on the screen, you can see the original slippers, and I have to say George VI, I believe, was a small man, Caroline de Gitter tells me, but his feet were only about this big. So the new slippers were considerably larger. The buckles were made by different specialists working in collaboration to the design of Clive Burr. So Clive provided the master drawings, which were translated into 3D printed wax models using computer-aided design by David Valley. The wax model was then cast in silver according to the traditional lost wax method at West One Casting in Hatton Garden. They were then worked on by the specialist engraver Samantha Marsden at Sam James Engraving, which has been in operation at the Goldsmiths Centre since it opened its doors in 2012. The buckles were gilded by the royal warrant holder Reg Elliott of Elliott Fitzpatrick, also at the Goldsmiths Centre. Now, we kept a duplicate pair of the buckles for our own collection, marked number 2 on their reverses. And here you can see the hallmarks on the right. So number 2, showing this is our duplicate pair for our collection. The mark Clive Burr, the sponsor's mark, his sponsor's mark. The lion passant for the fineness mark. The 925 for sterling silver. The coronation mark for the coronation year at the bottom. The letter Y for the date letter for 2023 for London. And the leopard's head of the London Assay Office. Small wares like this have always been a feature of the company's related trades, and buckles actually appear on the arms of the company alongside larger cups in silver to show the range of the related trades and crafts that it supports. And so from the cups on our arms to coronation cups. The first one, commissioned by the company, was made to commemorate the coronation of George VI in 1936. It was designed by Leslie Durbin, who was only 23 years old at the time. He'd studied at the Central School of Arts and Crafts and had been apprenticed to the great silversmith Omar Ramsden. He received a number of scholarships from the company, and this was an early design made by the Central School of Arts and Crafts. It's hand-raised, and it has 2 cast and chased rampant lions from the royal arms set within its angular handles. The pierced finial is in the form of the royal cipher. We followed that with the cup on the right in 1953, the Coronation Cup of Elizabeth II, a remarkable design by Professor Robert Gooden of the Royal College of Art, which was made by the silversmiths Wakeley and Wheeler. The silver gilt cup and cover are shaped like the orb in the royal regalia, with the royal arms appearing on the plaque, cleverly hidden within the balustrade on the foot. The form takes its inspiration from the English steeple cups of the late 16th century, the end of the reign of Elizabeth I, as reimagined by a modernist architect who was closely involved in the Festival of Britain in 1951. So it's a fusion of old and new in marking a new Elizabethan era. Elizabeth's cup was presented to her at the Mansion House. On the table in front of her was placed one of the Goldsmiths Company's greatest treasures, known as the Bowes Cup of 1554, which by tradition is thought to have been used by Elizabeth I at her coronation banquet before it was given to the company in 1561 as a remembrance by Sir Martin Bowes. The late Queen showed her perfect understanding of the symbolism of the two cups and the relationship between them. She drank from her cup and then graciously presented it to the company in remembrance of her predecessor, Elizabeth I. The scene is recorded in this contemporary painting by Terence Cuneo, which always reminds me of a Ladybird book illustration, for those of us who are old enough to remember Ladybird books. And I've marked the two cups. So she's holding her coronation cup, which you see also on the left, and the right-hand arrow points to the Bowes cup. And here you see the Bowes cup alongside the company court book for 1561, in which its gift as a remembrance is recorded. So given this long history of association, when Queen Elizabeth II sadly died in 2022, we knew what we had to do. We immediately set about commissioning a cup. There was no time for an open design competition, and I'm glad somebody else mentioned pressure of time with royal commissions. Believe me, that's the way it goes. There was no time for a competition, so we drew up a detailed brief and we set up an expert commissioning panel chaired by Dr. Timothy Schroeder, who you'll hear from in a minute, and invited various silversmiths to submit proposals. Finished designs were then considered from shortlisted makers before the winners were chosen. Silversmith Clive Burr and the artist enameller Jane Short, who have for many years worked in artistic partnership. Their work, both jointly and independently, is well represented in the company's collection, and they both have extraordinarily high standing within the silversmithing community. Jane Short comments, "Colour in the medium of enamel has been the driving force of my making career, in particular how colour and line work together over a three-dimensional object as the perspective alters. Colour is a very evocative medium." As she has increasingly concentrated on enamelling and engraving in her work, she collaborates with Clive Burr at the Goldsmiths Centre for the silversmithing and what might be called the engineering of the pieces that they make together on commission. Just to show how demanding the enamel decoration on the cup is, this is Jane Short's J-wing vase with Charlevet and Basse-taille enamel from 1990. It's one of her earliest pieces on a large scale, and this company commission left her free to choose her subject so as to support her in developing her skill. She based her design on a very precise observation of the subtle graduations of colour and texture on the wing of a J. And she submitted 2 design drawings. The finished vase is remarkably close to the approved drawing on the left, except that she was asked by the company to make the rim of the neck a little wider. It was a really important commission for Jane. She wrote to me, "That was the starting point of my love for the technique. Subtle, resonant enamel colours, mixed like painterly watercolour over a rough-cut silver surface of varying depths. I was happily caught up in my own dialogue with the enamel. The longer you work with the material, the more you see when you have made a technical error, such as bubbles or cracking in the enamel. Controlling the surface texture is important, and most importantly, how the enamel reacts with the metal onto which it is fused." People often ask when looking at masterpieces like this, how long did it take to make? Jane's notebook, which I show you details from on the right, shows that she worked for 219.5 hours on the engraving, the grinding, and the preparing of pigments and the successive enamel firings. It was certainly a milestone in her development as an artist in enamel, as the Coronation Cup has proved to be too. And here also is Jane's Millennium dish with its design drawing, commissioned by the company in 1999. So it has a vortex in the middle, and spinning out from that, the human celebrations of bonfires and fireworks, and then the whirling elements of gases and water beyond, moving out into space. It's a real stimulus to the imagination. So returning to the brief for the Coronation Cup, we required it to be a tall, formal standing cup and cover with clean lines and a soaring quality. It was to have a long stem and no handles. It was to stand about 45 centimetres high. It was to bear the royal arms and the arms of the City of London, suitable for presentation at the Mansion House banquet marking the King's entry into the city. The silver would have to be 100% recycled. We were keen on rich gilding and on colour, perhaps from enamelled elements. We wanted it to complement the late Queen Elizabeth's cup in scale and stature. We were keen that different specialists might come together collaboratively on the piece as something which is, so to speak, the hallmark of our craft. Now, these initial designs impressed our panel. Here was something formal and graceful in its lines, although we asked for it to have a more elongated stem. Note the finial and the sunburst at the top, which echo that on the late Queen's Cup, but also the practicality of the separate base from which the cup can be lifted for easy handling and drinking. This was their answer to the question of how to give the cup presence, while at the same time not making it too awkward or heavy to handle. The plinth is visually part of the cup, but separates when it's lifted, and when it's lifted, it had a secret to reveal as an integral part of the design, which I'll show you later. From the very start, the contribution of 9 specialists was envisaged to make this piece, masterminded by Clive and Jane. Several of them are based at our own Goldsmiths Centre. Here is the first technical drawing in computer-aided design by Linda Straupenieks in Clive Burr's workshop, dated March 2023, which gives you a sense of the engineering skill required to realise the form. All the specialists worked to this master plan, always thinking in 3 dimensions. And here is the painted wooden model as submitted to the panel for final approval, showing every detail of the cup. Now I'm going to take you through it piece by piece, starting with the globe, enamelled in bass tie by Jane Short, which serves as a knop in the stem. And the design of the knop is a tribute to His Majesty's long-standing involvement with the natural world, his leadership on environmental issues, and his concern for the future of our planet. And it also has a practical function in that it's wonderful to grip in the hand. Jane Short has been representing the globe and maps and the oceans in blue enamel since the 1980s. An early version is this flat oval map in cloisonné enamel, which appears on Bernie Ecclestone's motor racing trophy, designed and made by Fox Silver in 1984, which is currently on display in our exhibition at Goldsmiths Hall, Silver in the Fast Lane. A stylised ocean wave appears on the right on the knop of the Court wine cup, commissioned by Mark Bridges for his personal use in Goldsmiths Hall in 2008, referring to his love of sailing in the Hebrides. And the most recent variant is this enamelled and gilded globe knop with the insignia of the Royal Marines on the late Richard Madeley's Court Cup from 2019. Richard had served on secret missions in the Arctic Circle, which inspired the mountain ranges, the icy seas, and the wonderful pale lemon gilding inside this cup. But this enamelled globe was to be one of the finest things that Jane has ever made. It starts with a drawing on a silver globe, and then starts to engrave the texture of whirling currents and tides, which you will then see through layers of fired translucent enamel. Thanks to Clive and Jane, I can show you the detailed set of images of the cup in the making. And they reveal something of the techniques, both traditional hand skills and the latest digital technologies which have been used to make this piece, but they can't possibly convey that 3D thinking I mentioned, which informs every aspect of the silversmithing. But I am keen to convey the culture of the cup and its making, even more than its technical mastery. Here you see the first and second enamel layers after firing, building up the ocean blue and the land masses. Here you see the third firing on the left, with its engraved or flinked surface of the silver clearly visible through the enamelled blue translucent fired layers. And then the addition of the traces of cloud cover whirling over the globe is seen from space on the right. And an irresistible detail of the deep ocean blue which Jane achieved on the 3 firings of the oceans. The body of the cup was spun in silver to exact specifications from Clive Burr by the specialist spinner Steph & Co., who is turned to by many other makers, including enamellers, in preparing the silver for them to work on. And here you see the recess for a ring of blue enamel being cut into the base of the stem on a lathe on the left, and Jane's marking up of the recesses for enamel on the upper part of the stem where it joins the globe. Jane is seen on the right applying layers of blue enamel on the stem, plain blue on the lower ring, and continuing the theme of the globe above in showing Gothic tracery, revealing views of a blue sky on the upper part, engraved by Samantha Marsden. The enamelling was then polished by Graham Hamilton of Jane's enamelling team. Here we see the construction of the foot, or the separate base element of the cup, being soldered together with its central opening to hold the foot of the cup securely. For this, Jane designed a marvellous continuous panel of deep carving into a band of silver, showing the 4 national flowers of the UK, each with its pollinator. So at the top you have the dog rose for England and a bumblebee, the Irish flax with hoverflies, the wild Welsh daffodil with a solitary bee, and Scottish thistles with a monarch butterfly. Like the enamelled globe on the knop with its reference to climate change, The designs are both symbolic of the king's rule over his peoples in the UK, but also of his deep and long-standing concern for nature, ecology, and the future of farming. Once the base was assembled, Jane set to work on a sloping surface, transferring her design using tracing paper and marker, then cutting deeply into the silver, always with her design source and picture references close at hand. And here you see the flax and the hoverflies, the dog rose and the bumblebee, the thistle and the monarch butterfly, the daffodil and the solitary bee. And do note the quality of the inscription beneath by Samantha James, master engraver at the Goldsmiths Centre, which says the Coronation Cup of His Majesty King Charles III, 2023. And this is how it looked after the final polishing and gold plating. The theme of Gothic tracery on the stem is also taken up on the base. When the cup is lifted, a low-relief rose window, pierced in silver, is revealed. Kingship, but most especially British kingship, is referred to here, with the references to Westminster Abbey. The design emulates the famous rose window in the north transept of Westminster Abbey, which of course has been the theatre of coronations since 1066. Here you see the finished rose window element on the right, and its assembly into the carved and engraved base. You see Clive doing that. And this has been done with such incredible accuracy and craftsmanship. I wanted to say that when I first arrived at the British Museum looking after Renaissance silver, I turned various Tudor pieces of silver, great masterpieces, upside down and was shocked at the way they're finished underneath with sloppy amalgam, mercury amalgam gilding all over the place and so on. I tell you, you turn this piece upside down and it is so beautifully finished and made that it's really a masterpiece from every angle. And now I want to show you the cover. That's the finished base, by the way, with the rose window inserted. And you can see what a beautiful reveal that is when you lift the cup away and that is revealed. And now back to the drawings for the cover. This was always going to be a very important element in adding grandeur and stature and in relating this cup to that of the King's mother, Elizabeth II, in our collection. So the inspiration for the cover was again very personal in reference to the King. It is the sundial garden at his house at Highgrove in Gloucestershire. If you look at the photograph, you'll see in the background the scalloped yew hedge, which was the model for the design on the lip of the cover. Can I show you that? So there is the scalloped yew hedge in the garden, and here it is on the cover. And you'll notice that the parterre arrangement is picked up in these straps on the cover, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the finial was to be engraved by Jane Short and enamelled by Fiona Ray. But first I just want to show you, this is the cover as it was when it was sent to the artist engraver Angus MacFadyen for his specialist engraving. And what he did was texture these elements with the yew hedges, but then also he added the very, very beautiful, I hope you can see here, the very, very beautiful detail of the delphiniums which grow in the gardens at Highgrove. So there's a beautifully engraved onto that curved surface, which was sent through the post to Angus MacFadyen. The finial was then engraved by Jane Short and enamelled by Fiona Ray in Jane's enamelling team. And I wanted to show you here on the right Jane's instructions to Fiona on the colours to use with test pieces of the other enamelled elements on the cup for colour matching. There's a lovely instruction here to Fiona, which I hope you can see here. She talks about the different colours. She says a darker blue, number 26, or your own mix. 155, maybe with some overlay of T219 if 155 is a bit shouty. That's very Jane, you hear her voice there. And she's shown as well a lovely sample of the globes enamelling. So it's very carefully orchestrating every detail. Here you see the finished fired enamel of the finial. And Jane wrote to me about this. She was very nervous about all the firing moments. She said, enamelling has its moments, especially when you're using a big hot kiln and there's no room for error. But fortunately, this went beautifully. And here on the right, you see the making of the fluted element of the finial, which was worked by the silversmith Kyosen Jung in Clive's workshop. And here's a detail of the finial of Elizabeth II's coronation cup, Jane and Clive wanted to refer to that. They wanted to update that element and, if you like, perfect it, because their finial has individual flame elements which unscrew for cleaning from the sphere which holds them. So here you can see the silver engraved finial ball. Here you see it after its wonderful layers of golden translucent enamel have been added, with the open screw holes for the little fire elements. And on the right, you see those individual little screw elements which fit in. And there you see them fitted in before the final gold plating on one side. And on the other side, how it all looked after the final gold plating and polishing. Part of the brief was to have the cup engraved with 2 coats of arms, the royal arms and the arms of the City of London, to mark the King's entry into the city and his welcome at the Mansion House dinner for which the cup was to be commissioned. Designing the form of the arms required the approval of the College of Arms, and they were engraved by the specialist Samantha Marsden at St James. And here you see the finished designs for her to follow in the engraving. And here are the workshop drawings of that engraving after polishing and gold plating by Reg Elliott at the Goldsmiths Centre. And I think you can see the superb detail of those arms. Before the final plating and polishing, the cup went to the London Assay Office in Goldsmiths Hall for hallmarking. The Assay Office has been on this site since 1478. It's vital in consumer protection and the regulation of standards in the trade, and every year it holds the government to account in testing the metal composition of our currency in the annual trial of the picks. Hallmarking was integral to this commission from the beginning and was undertaken by the expert Sheila Priest. Now, it's always a tense moment for makers to have their pieces hallmarked. I went with Clive Burr to see it be done by laser marking on the white silver elements, and there were part marks also on the cover and the foot. Clive had covered the entire surface of the cup with masking tape to protect the enamels, leaving only the small area for the hallmarks. And I took this photograph on my phone, showing my hand holding the phone and his grimacing face in the one area that was left free for hallmarking. And here on the left-hand side, you see the actual finished mark. So starting left to right, Clive Burr's sponsors mark, the Lion Passant fineness mark, the 925 mark for sterling, the Coronation mark in the centre, the leopard head of the company assay office, the date letter Y for 2023, and Jane Short's sponsors mark. So the 2 makers who masterminded the whole process with all the other specialists, their marks frame all of the marks on the piece. And here you see the 2 cups together. And I think you can see how well the Charles III cup complements that of his mother, as was intended from the outset of the commission. It takes the story nicely from Elizabeth I into the future of our country and our craft. We held a special reception at Goldsmiths Hall for all the specialist makers, and here they are, and I haven't really got much time, but there they all are labelled for you, and they were delighted to be there, and it was a lovely occasion. Then I had the fun with our silver steward of taking the 2 coronation cups to the Mansion House and placing them on the table for the dinner. It was particularly pleasing that the King referred to the tradition of the city's livery production of special and precious items in support of coronations. These include the magnificent coronation cup, which your guests have an opportunity to see in the equally magnificent setting of Mansion House this evening. The theme of his address was also a perfect match for the design of the cup. He talked about the human instinct to collaborate and the importance of our relationships one to another, the greatest challenge of all being global warming and climate change, which are all things which Clive and Jane had picked up in the personal and formal elements of this cup. So the cup's presence on that occasion demonstrated how pieces in our collection are ambassadors for the company's role in national life. Sharing what we do with wider audiences is a very important way of introducing people to a world-leading craft of designer British silver. And here you see, finally, both cups on the antique buffet for a formal dinner at Goldsmiths Hall. And I hope you can see how easily the design of the new cup, which is 3rd from the right on the bottom row, how well it integrates with the very best quality pieces commissioned for the hall in the 1740s. This is a piece which combines formal grace, ceremony, and practicality. His Majesty the King recently enjoyed handling it at Clarence House, and wrote to say how much he appreciated its craftsmanship and the references to his environmental concerns and his creation at Highgrove. The precision and artistry of this cup demonstrates how the Goldsmiths Company continues to inspire creativity and excellence in its support for contemporary makers. It's going to be displayed with other masterpieces of enamel from our amazing collection in the front hall of Goldsmiths Hall for the 2024 Goldsmiths Fair, so please come and see it there. Thank you.